Have you noticed that everything demonic is loud, noisy and disruptive? People who are under the influence of the demon are tendentially that way inclined. Loud, noisy and disruptive. Father Michael Marr, whom you know, was here one day and he was saying, quoting this man in his community who since died, "Hell is full of noise." We have a new year before us, and sometimes we are our own worst enemy. There is noise inside and of our own making outside. We do not have to have all that much noise, even to communicate. And observe the dysfunctionality of many a so-called communication. What's happening? One is being talked at. Noise. Emission. Human geezers not able to contain themselves. Now, in juxtaposition, we have this feast which places us in the silence of the centuries. St. Ita was a hidden gem and a hidden giant who functioned not on the basis of emission of noise, but on its pruning, which alone gave access to the still small voice and the work of grace, which is always the contrary of noise. It is never violent upon the soul. The result was that she exercised her spiritual maternity and loved souls into being. That we can do. We love souls into being. We heal by what comes out of us on every level. We transmit something of what we receive at the altar. Do you remember in the Acts how it was noted they took attention of the fact that they had been with Jesus? That was an early testimony. They had been with him. That too should be our part. If we have been with him, we emit what we have received from being with him. We love, and that means the absence of aggression, violence and noise. Now, as a result of this early settlement and what came from it, we know that Ireland was extremely open to grace, and that has been the case on a phenomenal scale until our generation. Ireland itself was a mother spiritually to many areas of the world. Grace came from this holy land, a land of saints and scholars, and sanctified through divine grace many, many souls who are now in glory. And we observe all over this land, even actually just outside here, traces of that. For Duleek is of that period. St. Keenan was a disciple of St. Patrick, and it is said perhaps his favourite. Now, I want to show you something. This little book is a picture book and a history book combined. I just opened by chance this chapter, which nearly moved me to tears. It starts there, and they're doing what we're doing right now. They're covering the cross of the high altar with sweet-smelling incense. But look carefully, and you see hooded monks behind. They are Cistercians, who, of course, came very close to here in the first colonization of the Cistercian period in Ireland, because St. Bernard sent them to nearby Mellifont, which means fountain of honey, which you know very well, just down the road. And they came there, as they came also to Wales from Clairvaux, there to another monastery in the south, Whitland. Now, they there again radiated warmth because God was being honoured and free to bless. So without violence, they colonized, and indeed, even on the material level, they healed the land. because they were good workers. And indeed, here they are, working. There is, I believe, here we are, a good picture, not a pose at all. They're hard at work before there were JCBs around, because this photo must be going back a good few years. It's Casamari, by the way, a big monastery in Italy, Cistercian. But they're working in silence with their hoods up. And indeed, when we were being taught there way back in the mid-70s to work, we were taught this. When you go to work, you go one behind the other. You would go into work one behind the other with the hood up, and you would not talk on the horizontal but on the vertical. And in fact, Thomas Merton in one of his books comments on this procession of monks going backwards and forwards to work. How those rosaries which they were saying quietly on the way back from work were perhaps saving many souls, rather than wasting time creating hot air in useless conversation. Monastic work is an extension of what? The choir. It's not a compartment for prayer and a compartment for work. It's one flowing out into the other. And that is yours for the taking. We don't change mode when we come out of the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. We have Jesus in us. And so we stay switched on, and we offer up what we're doing. Now think of that at the beginning of the year, because we've got a new package of time consecrated before you live it. That is the beginning of every day, united to that of Christ on the cross. And it becomes his sacrifice extended in time, and you're saving souls. Your work, your pain is redemptive and not just functional. Now, what's going on there? Can you see? What is that part of the monastery called? Does the word chapter mean anything to you? Chapter. Yes? Now, do you know where the word chapter comes from? Because you find them in all these ruins. You find a big chapter house. It's from the word chapter in the rule. That is, they would read a chapter or a part of the rule every morning in that position. The abbot would be in the high place and his monks would be around. In a big monastery, they'd have the fathers up on the back seats and the little ones like yourselves down the bottom on the lower rung there of the steps. And that's where things would happen. The chapter was a place where they would get spiritual input and practical input, because they discussed what had to be done. That is to say, it's the place where the family is lived, because silence does not allow communication elsewhere. But there they would actually make big decisions, and they would vote on things. The way that was done, it was with white or black beans. And you could be black bowled out of chapter when you were not accepted for your vows. Now, what's going on here? What does that say, the caption? Fighting the devil by pen and ink. Now he's not talking, is he? But he may be making a big noise with his pen, but for good. We can do a lot of good by pens and their modern equivalents, things which go bump in the night. Now, we can do, therefore, with the devil's own means, his own unbusiness. As the Holy Father would say in a more elegant way, if you can't beat them, join them. And he's saying more or less, get in there. Don't let the devil have a field day. So that's what we're doing sometimes when pressing a button. We're doing a modern form of that, because people now are looking at screens and not reading pages, alas. Now what's going on there? Can you see, or can you guess what's actually going on in that quaint picture on your right? The two monks, what are they doing? Going to confession, you got it first time. And that's exactly the kind of scene that you would get. It's a very consoling moment. And normally you'd be going to confession every week. You'd have your regular monk to whom you would go, and you would say what had happened in the week, and you'd have a good chat. And it was a safety valve. It kept you on track, having what they used to call in Ireland an aramchara, a soul friend, someone who's dear to your soul, who loves you into being. And these nuns, like Ita, were good soul friends. They loved the people that they handled, and that's why you can do good to a soul. If you start off from that point of view of God who beams love into that soul and wishes it well, you do not come to correct or regress. You come first of all to meet and to listen. Now, there we have them in the old monastic church going in to what is the forecourt of heaven. When one is in church, one is with the angels singing the praise of God. And in France, it was pointed out to us by the novice master that on the sides of where we were chanting, in the choir stalls, there were angel wings carved. And he explained to us it's to remind us, in conspectu angelorum psalam tibi Deus meus, in the sight of the angels I will sing psalms to you, my God. And he was reminding us, as indeed St. Benedict himself did, that we were not just on earth at that moment. We were doing something cosmic. We were holding up all creation, therefore actualizing the work done for many hours in the fields in prayer, offering up, and also sustaining the world, hence getting up at night when the whole world was fast asleep. With the angels one keeps vigil and keeps that beacon alight. That's the end of the day, when the abbot is blessing them with holy water. Still happens here, should anyone be at Compline, they would get blessed before going to sleep. And the way that it was done then, you'd come out of last office, which is Compline, and before you put your hood up, because the hood has to be kept up all night in the night hours until after Lord's, and you do not communicate in any way whatsoever, not even a nod at night, and there, immediately after the abbot had blessed you, because you'd be bowing before him, immediately after he blessed you, you put up your hood and you process behind the others into bed, because there was a common bed, 2 dormitories. The dormitory for the great snorers and those for the minor snorers. Now, the abbot, by the way, liked to sleep next to me because I didn't snore. Interesting. Now, I want to speak just for a few seconds on this particular saint. Often in Irish names we see the trace of the saint, and her name has survived in Kil Edi. Kil means what? It's church, I believe, isn't it? Church in Irish. So Edi is a corruption of Ita. Now, it's in County Limerick. St. Brendan, according to this tradition, is supposed to have asked her what 3 things God specially loved, to which she answered, true faith in God with a pure heart. Now, true faith is being contaminated in Ireland now because people are not being given the full message in school, in parish, in retreats, even in institutions of learning. Things are creeping in which are not the full message, they're part of it. We need a pure faith, we need the faith, because the faith is all or nothing. We can't take away bits of it or add our own. With a pure heart. Now, the heart can see God when it's pure, as the Lord points out. And the Desert Fathers, who, don't forget, were the origin of the monastic life, they would come out with this: the purity of heart is lost by 2 big things. One is holding rancour, feeling nasty things, unforgiveness, grudges, and nursing pain. And the devil would bring to mind people who'd hurt you, because there was nothing much coming in, so it made you ruminate over what was there in the past. And that was one way of getting away from purity of heart. The other was bad thoughts, naughty thoughts, obscene thoughts, being entertained and nurtured. Therefore, the other one. And that's very easy to get into now if one gets into looking at naughty things, because the mind feeds on what the eyes let in. So the shutters of the soul, the portholes, are the eyes. We need to be very careful where we let the eyes settle. A simple life with a religious spirit. A simple life means a life which is not complicated. Do you see it? The simple and the complicated have the same root. The root is plex in both. To bend, that's the root of plex. In one way, sim, together, or in many, multiplicity, complicated, full of bends. A soul which is complex is emitting energy in every direction. A soul which is simplex is going into one. And the whole simplification of noise in silence and the structure in the monastic life, and in your case in not doing too many things, is so that we concentrate the energy on love. We don't disperse. Therefore, noise is the enemy of the soul. It's dispersive. It's attacking us and draining us. Silence is the consequence of a simple soul. We say much more in a few words well said than an unstoppable flow of words. The third point. An open-handedness inspired by charity. Now, the Irish are kind and are known to be so in the world. You ask anyone who works for the aid to the church in need, and they'll tell you that Ireland is way up in their kindness to other countries and other souls. And it's true, even actually here, I've seen it from the beginning. Do you know that I never have to buy any food, ever? That's something, isn't it? It's a perpetual miracle. The only thing I ever sometimes have to buy is a little bit of milk, but even that usually tends to arrive. Now, do you see how God recompenses those who honour Him? I'll take care of your problems, you look at me. That's simplicity, and it works itself out then in charity, because a heart which is burning with love overflows even practically and materially. So I conclude, we've got a new year, let's not botch it up with too much unnecessary, noisy complication.